Hello. Today we're going to learn how to create something configurable. I've created a new part studio, and for our example, I'm going to just create a cylinder. My cylinder will be 2 inches wide, and let's make it 2 inches tall. So a configuration allows you to easily switch between set features, I guess, of an object. And let me show you how it works. Over here on the very right-hand side, you can see that this second little box is called the configuration panel, and I'm clicking on it right here. And when I open the configuration panel, my first option is to configure Part Studio. I can choose how I want to configure it. The default is list configuration. So you can see this little symbol right here is the same as list. And this right here is the Part Studio that I want to configure. So I'm going to configure this Part Studio. And these are its default properties, the object that we've created. To configure something, I'm going to click Configure Feature. And I can choose which feature I want to configure. Let's say I want to configure the depth at which it's extruded. You can see that as I hover over this, I can configure almost anything because any parameter I want to configure is turning yellow. So I'm going to choose the depth of the extrusion, and you can see that that option appears right here. I'm going to click Done. My default depth is 2 inches because that's what I set it to when I created it, but I can create, let's say, a 4-inch cylinder. When I press enter, you can see the default depth it gives me is 2 inches because that's what it was above, but I will type in 4. And then let me create a 6-inch cylinder. And once again, the default depth is listed, but you can change it to 6. And with this, I've created my first set of list configurations. And over here on this drop down, you can see that I can now change between a 4 and 6-inch cylinder, and it changes the depth at which it was extruded. And I can switch back and forth. I can extrude or configure pretty much anything I want. I can even configure the size of this cylinder. So if I click here, I can highlight over and configure. You can see the sketch 1 diameter. So I could also configure it to be, let's say, larger. Maybe I want its diameter to match the size of its extrusion. So now you can see I can change it, and not only does its height change, but its width also changes. Another thing that I can configure is a linear pattern. Let's say I want to pattern this object along this direction. Let's say I want to make them a little far apart. There we go. And I'll click add so that they merge together to create this shape. I can also configure this pattern. So I can make it have 2 or 3 or 4 patterns. And to show you, it might be easier because you can see right now that let me delete this actually. Does it let me delete row, column? There we go. You can see that the sketch diameter and the extrude depth go together. Like right now, you can't have a depth of 2 with a diameter of 4. If you wanted to do that, you could create a new list down here and configure, for example, the sketch diameter over here. So, come on. So maybe I want a 4-inch diameter and a 5-inch diameter. So now you can see I have 2 options, the height of the cylinder and then the width of the cylinder right here. So you can change both of these properties independently. Let's say I wanted to configure how many times it's patterned. I would create a new configuration, click the pattern, and then under Configure Features, I would choose the number of times it's patterned. You you can see it would show up on the new list right here. So I can create one that's patterned 5 times, one that's patterned 10 times, for example. And then I would just make this 5 and this one 10. So you can see now I'd be able to change, and I can pattern it 5 times or I can pattern it 10 times. And with that pattern, I can change its diameter and I can change its height. So these are all different things you can do with configurations. Your guys' mission today, let me pull it up, is to create a configurable ladder. Creating a simple ladder with 2 sides and a rung and a linear pattern that lets you add segments to the ladder. So we're looking to be able to easily switch between a 6-foot and an 8-foot ladder. So if you draw and extrude a ladder with approximately these dimensions, they don't have to be perfect. What you would do is then you would go and create a linear pattern just like this. Make sure you choose add so that they are attached together as a single part instead of adding new parts every time you pattern it. And then configure your instance count so that you can easily switch between a 6-foot and an 8-foot ladder. That is our first mission for today.